Let me just start by saying that when I turned 50, I seemed to have had a belated midlife crisis. I was living in New York at the time. I was a caterer. I had my own catering business. I wrote about food. Prior to having a catering business, I was a writer and editor in the corporate world in New York. And by the time I turned 50, I was fed up, literally fed up and exhausted, and tired of the rat race, and I had had a breast cancer scare. And while I was waiting for the results, which turned out to be benign, while I was waiting, though, I made a list of things I wanted to do with what was left of my life. What do they call that, a bucket list? Bucket list. So, you know, being the drama queen that I am, I made this long bucket list. You know, I wanted to go back to Africa because when I was in my 20s, I lived in what was then Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, from 1969 to 72. And I worked on a magazine there, farming magazine, which I loved. And I loved it there. And I missed Africa for many, many years. So in this bucket list was the wish to go back to Africa. And also I wanted to learn to speak French, finally. And I wanted to, what else? Oh, I wanted to take dancing lessons. And it was a long list. Most of all, I wanted to do something worthwhile with my life, something that had purpose and meaning. So at this time, mind you, I'm still waiting for the results of the biopsy, I saw an ad in the New York Times, and as you know, everyone in New York reads the New York Times every morning with their coffee, and I saw this ad for the Peace Corps. It said, the toughest job you'll ever love. And I went, oh, that sounds good. And I had not been one of these people who had dreamed of joining the Peace Corps all my life. It was just at this particular juncture, I would have joined the Foreign Legion if I could. You know, I just wanted to get out of Dodge, and Dodge was New York City. So I called up this number in the ad, and I said, look, and this is very New York, you know, you're negotiating. Said, this is the deal, I said to the guy. I said, I would like to go back to Africa. I would like to work with women and children. I would like to speak French, so it would have to be a French-speaking country on the west side of Africa. And what else? Oh, I think I had another, you know, must-have. And the man said, oh, I said, by the way, I'm not a kid anymore. I'm a grown-up. I'm 50. And if you only take recent college graduates, I'm afraid I'm a little past that. And the young man on the other end of the phone said, please come in. We want you. And of course everybody wants to hear those magic words. And I went in and they gave me, after the application and all of the screening and all of the medical tests that you have to go through, they gave me exactly what I wanted. They sent me to a French-speaking country in Africa, where I would be working with women and children, teaching health and nutrition, which was perfect because I had been a caterer for 10 years, and I taught healthy cooking in the New York Cooking School. So this was ideal. I was so happy. So I went there. But before I went, my next-door neighbor in New York, who had the apartment next to mine, who had been in the Peace Corps in Thailand in the 60s. She was one of the first to go. When she heard that I was interested in the Peace Corps, she said, oh, great. I'll take care of the sublet of your apartment. I'll take care of your cat. I'll take care of everything so that you can do this. And thanks to her, I was able to do it. I was able to commit, and I went to Gabon. The capital of Gabon is on the Atlantic coast here. My post was in the interior, right in the middle there, on the train line. 10 hours by train to the capital, Libreville. Gabon, on the equator, very hot all the time, hot and humid every day, over 100 degrees, sweating all the time. I was in the rainforest, deep into the rainforest. It was like being an ant in a garden of broccoli. You know, so all the trees were full and like broccoli over your head. It was very dense. But I loved my little town. And my friend, Martha Cooper, my next door neighbor, who was managing my apartment, sublet, is a famous photographer, award-winning photographer. She used to work for National Geographic. She's done over a dozen photography books, and she goes on assignments all over the world. Well, she had an assignment in Africa, and she came to visit me while I was there at my post. She thought my town was very boring, and so she just tootled around with her camera and snapped pictures wherever, and she gave me many of those photos for the book that I wrote when I came back to the States. It took about 10 years to write this book. It's called How to Cook a Crocodile, and it's a memoir with recipes, which is a subgenre of the memoir. I was a writer. I went to Columbia and studied writing in a writing program there. So I used food as a metaphor for, in this case, adaptation. How do you adapt to living in a tiny little town in the middle of the rainforest in Central Africa? How do you adapt? That's the question. The title you may be able to recognize is a play on M.S.K. Fisher's book, How to Cook a Wolf. She wrote about the deprivations of wartime. Her book came out in World War II. How to Cook a Wolf. Well, if you have the wolf at the door, you invite the wolf in and cook him. So this is How to Cook a Crocodile, and there is, in fact, a recipe for crocodile stew in it. The village of Mana Mana, about 40 kilometers southeast of Lastorsville, was large by Gabonese village standards. It had roughly 500 inhabitants who lived in traditional houses made of wood frame walls encased in mud, with roofs of either woven thatch or corrugated metal. The village was bisected by a wide dirt road, and these squat, mud-wattled houses stood on either side of that road in neat rows, as if their purpose was to greet vehicular travelers like an honor guard as they passed through. Large families grouped in clusters or small compounds occupied most of the houses in Mana Mana. But Morgan, my pisciculture postmate, a single 24-year-old recent college graduate from Michigan, had a spacious house of her own at the far end of the village, a half-hour's walk along the main, well, only, road from where the village began. Once a week, Morgan made the treacherous hour-long motorcycle ride from Mana Mana to Lastorsville, along deeply rutted mountainous dirt roads, to pick up her mail at the boîte postale we shared, buy provisions at the local Lebanese shops, and visit me. When I heard her approach, her Yamaha buzzing up the hill to my house, sounding from a distance like an encroaching bumblebee, I would rush to greet her happily. Although I was twice her age and older than her mother, Morgan and I had become good friends, and I looked forward to our weekly visits. It was a chance to talk in English again, catch up on each other's news, laugh at everything or at nothing, play a good game of Scrabble, which she usually won, embark on a new crafts project together, and share American meals. If it wasn't raining, Morgan and her red, white, and blue motorcycle would arrive covered in a film of brick red road dust. When she removed her helmet, her long, honey-colored hair would be damp from perspiration and flattened to her scalp. When she smiled hello, her white teeth would contrast comically with the road dust-caked, exposed parts of her face. Nevertheless, her Midwestern, unspoiled wholesomeness, her calm centeredness, and her total lack of vanity made her a beauty. Every week I'd greet her with wide arms and tell her what I'd made for our lunch. I often made mama food for us, down-home American dishes like my mother used to make when I was a child. It was food meant to make Morgan feel nourished in more ways than one. At her post in Mana Mana, I knew, she generally ate with her neighbors outdoors, sitting in a circle on the dry, dusty earth, and manioc, in all its limited forms, was the standard fare. Before we eat, let me show you the latest member of my family, I told her excitedly one day, pulling her into my study where my hand puppets stood in a motley cluster held up by tall bottles on my desk. You made another puppet? She said, peeling off her dust-covered windbreaker and shaking out her long matted hair. I'm starting to worry about you, Bonnie, she teased. You're alone too much. You behave as if these puppets are alive. Oh, you're going to love this one, I said, picking up the long-faced, bald-headed, bloodshot, beady-eyed puppet whose skin was a faded, old, gray-white gym sock. What little hair he had was a thin fringe of blue yarn at the sides and along the lower back of his head. His sloppy, droopy mustache was made of blue yarn, too, and in his right hand he held a lit cigarette made from a piece of lollipop stick painted red at the tip. His name, I said, is Jean Bourrien. John, good for nothing? That's a hoot. What'll he do? He'll sing a song that says, Donne-moi l'argent, with his hand out, and then the kids will tell him, no, we're not going to give you money. Go get a job. So, you're trying to teach them the Protestant work ethic now. That's really funny. So I'll skip ahead to where I go and visit Morgan at her village. At that time, fish volunteers were the only ones who were issued motorcycles. The rest of us got mountain bikes with thick, heavily treaded tires, plus training on how to maintain and repair them. But soon after settling into my post, I realized that Lobstersville was too hilly for bike riding in over 100-degree heat and 100% humidity. And my teaching aids, such as posters, puppets, and pots and pans, were too cumbersome to carry on a bike's handlebars. So I relinquished my bike at the first opportunity. It was easier and safer for me, I thought, to get around town on foot. When it came time to traveling farther afield, however, I had to be both fearless and bold. The first time I traveled to Mana Mana to visit Morgan and to give health-related puppet shows to the village children there, I went by bush taxi. In this case, a pickup truck overloaded with African passengers and their belongings. Anxious parents, frightened little children, crying babies, bleeding goats, clusters of scrawny chickens tied at their feet and held upside down to silence and incapacitate them, huge hands of plantains, baskets of manioc, cheap zippered plastic valises filled to the breaking point, plus me and my big black backpack and bag of fragile handmade hand puppets crammed into the back of the battered pickup in the hope of somehow reaching our distant destinations that day. The driver, a stocky middle-aged Gabonese man with a weathered face and bloodshot eyes, motioned to me to sit up front with him, and I didn't resist. In the confines of the cabin, though, sandwiched between the driver and a shy high school student returning to his village for the weekend, I could tell that the driver had been drinking. I could smell it on his breath, his skin, his clothes. He drove too fast along the rutted mountainous roads. Through the dusty, cracked windshield, I could see steep ravines on both sides. The old pickup bounced and skidded erratically, as if its shocks and brakes were nearly shot. I felt trapped, the way I'd felt as a child, as a passenger in the back seat of my father's Hudson, when he was drunk and weaving his way home after a day spent at his favorite gin mill. Get me out of here, I wanted to shout at my father. Let me out, I'd rather be anywhere in the world but here. But I said nothing then. I held my feelings in. I knew he wouldn't listen. And even if I'd had the nerve to say something, and he did hear me, I knew what his comeback would be. You want something? I'll give you something. A knuckle sandwich. In the bush taxi, I held the dust-covered dashboard with both hands, swallowed hard, and considered my options. There was nothing but thick mountainous jungle as far as the eye could see. I couldn't ask him to let me out. Mana Mana was too far to walk. Doucement, easy does it, I finally urged him in as sweet a tone as I could muster, using the internationally recognized sign language of a flat hand, palm down, pumping imaginary brakes. And to my surprise, he slowed. He pulled the truck over to the side of the road, stopped, and got out. Uh-oh, I thought. He's about to throw me out. But then I saw, at the entrance to a small village, some women were selling palm wine from a rickety stand as if it were lemonade. I watched as the driver flirted with the women, paid for a plastic mugful of palm wine, and downed it like whiskey from a shot glass. Then he got back in the truck, and we drove off at top speed. It must have been palm wine season, because at every village we stopped to let a few passengers off, our driver found another palm wine stand waiting to serve him. By the time I got out in Mana Mana and he drove off, the man had drunk at least 6 more glasses of palm wine along our route. Morgan was waiting for me by the village grammar school, and I was never more happy to see her. Good trip? She asked, after hugging me hello. Exciting, I said, knowing she'd know exactly what I meant. Truly death-defying. I wiped my sweaty face with the sleeve of my white cotton shirt, brushed road dust from my once clean khakis, and stomped my Tiva-sandaled feet. Hungry? She said. I made Mexican food for lunch. I even made the tortillas by hand. Great. Mexico sounds good. Let's go there. But first, she said, let's say hi to the kids. They've been waiting patiently to meet Chantal. Chantal chanson means song in French, was the star of my handmade hand puppet theater troupe. There was something about her that the children adored. Was it her purple yarn bob that swooshed when she sang? Her chipmunky face and wide eyes turned eternally heavenward? Her sweet bow mouth always open to a song? Her clapping green felt hands and indefatigable energy? Her lilting singing voice, so different from my own? Among the little ones of Lastersville, Chantal was something of a rock star, and her signature song, Lavez les mains, shot to the top of their charts. Sometimes little children would stop to serenade me with this song when they saw me walking in town. Pour avoir la bonne santé, to have good health, Chantal belted out, head bobbing, purple hair flying, green hands clapping manically. Lavez les mains, aloe au savon. Wash your hands with water and soap. To avoid intestinal worms, her hit tune continued, wash your hands with water and soap. After using the toilet, she rhapsodized, wash your hands with water and soap. Before preparing a meal, she crooned, and the children jumped in to complete the refrain. Lavez les mains, aloe au savon. Morgan and I quickly set up a makeshift theater in an open shed, and the village children gathered around us in a rapt throng. Within minutes, the children of Manamana, too, were captivated by Chantal's charm. They had obviously never seen anything quite like her before. To them, it seemed, and not just to me, she was alive. Their wide eyes were so focused on her performance that they didn't notice me or Morgan at all. It was Chantal's voice they heard, not mine. She was the one with charm and charisma, not me. Little girls in tattered dresses watched her, awestruck, their hands over their mouths. Little boys in threadbare T-shirts and shorts, who were usually on the wild side, Morgan told me, were well behaved, enthralled by the show. Within minutes, everyone knew all of the words, and they were singing and clapping along with sunny Chantal. Then, after Chantal took a few bows as the kids applauded wildly, I brought out two more puppets who put on a Punch and Judy style show. There was Yvonne Savon is soap, whose head was carved from a big block of blue soap, and her dress made from a hand towel, and her arch enemy, Microbe, the French pronunciation of germ, who was decidedly ugly. Mic's papier-mâché face was bird-like, beaky, green, and mean, with a downturned mouth and slitty eyes. His green yarn hair was braided in rastas that stuck out all over his head. His robe was made from a brown and beige African print that looked vaguely like microbes under a magnifying glass. He was a puppet the kids loved to hate. Mick opened his act with an earnest Pavarotti-style rendition of his theme song, Si tu aimes les maladies, which translated was, if you love being sick, you love me, Microbe. If you love diarrhea, you love me, Microbe. If you love filth, you love me, Microbe. If you love being sick, then I, Microbe, will be happy to make you sick. At first, the children were aghast, but when they saw some adults in the audience laughing, their smiles grew too. Yvonne Savon then appeared on the scene and saved the day, overpowering Mick with the magic of her soap suds. Our show closed with Renee Repas. Repas means meal. A big mama of a puppet with a yellow plastic plate on her head filled with handmade miniature fruit and vegetables, who gave a Julia Child-like lecture on the importance of eating well every day to keep from falling ill. While Morgan held up a huge poster I'd made, Renee explained dramatically each of the 3 food groups depicted in the poster's pie chart. This group, called Protection, she warbled, with all the nice fruits and veggies in it, provide vitamins and minerals which protect us against illness. This energy group, which includes such foods as rice and bread and manioc, give us strength to run and jump and work and play.
And this one, construction, includes foods that offer bodybuilding protein, like peanuts, dried beans, eggs, meat, and fish. Fish, everyone in Mana Mana knew, was the reason for Morgan's being there. Morgan, a little like Chantal, was the star of their village, and everyone seemed to love her. Fish, the children repeated at the end of Renee's presentation.